All right, get this. We're diving into Worldcoin today.
Worldcoin.
Yeah, you know that whole scan your eyeball for digital cash thing?
Oh, yeah, that.
We got their white paper, and let me tell you, it was a wild ride.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wild in a good way, or?
We'll get into it, but definitely interesting. Don't worry, though. We're going to break it all down for you.
Okay.
Pull out the stuff that actually matters.
That was good.
Okay, so to kick things off, their big idea is this proof of personhood thing. What's the deal with that? Is it really as futuristic as it sounds?
Yeah, it's definitely forward thinking. Basically, WorldCoin is tackling this very real issue of proving you're human.
Okay.
In a world that's increasingly populated by bots.
Right.
Think about it. Online voting,
Yeah.
WLD, all these things that we're moving towards. They only work if you can be sure there's a real person on the other end.
Makes sense.
Not some AI cleverly disguised as, like, your grandma or something.
That makes sense. But their solution is iris scanning.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems pretty intense and a little creepy, to be honest.
It's definitely,
What's their justification for going straight to eyeballs?
well, their white paper actually dives into that, and
Yeah.
it's quite interesting. They argue that using your phone or even, traditional iris scanners
Yeah.
just aren't secure enough for something as important as global identification.
Okay.
They need something virtually unhackable and spoof-proof.
Right.
And that's where the Orb comes in.
Oh, on the orb.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, it's their custom-built hardware for scanning irises.
Really?
Yeah, they claim it uses multiple wavelengths of light and 3D cameras to capture all of the unique patterns in your iris, making it almost impossible to fake.
All right, so they're going all in on this high-tech orb thing.
They are.
But what about our privacy? I'm not sure I'm comfortable with some company having my unique biometric data on file.
Yeah.
That just seems like opening the door for all sorts of problems.
It's a valid concern. A lot of people have that concern. But WorldCoin addresses this head-on in their white paper.
Okay.
They emphasize privacy quite a bit, and they're using something called zero-knowledge proofs.
I've heard that term, but to be honest, it sounds like magic to me.
It kind of is.
Okay.
Imagine being able to prove you have a valid ID without actually showing anyone your ID card. That's essentially what zero-knowledge proofs allow. You can prove that you're a verified World ID holder
Right.
without revealing any personal information,
Wow.
not even your iris code.
So it's like a secret handshake.
Exactly.
Really?
And to take it a step further, they're also talking about something called personal custody,
Okay.
which means you would actually be storing your encrypted biometric data on your own device, not in some massive WorldCoin database.
Okay, that actually makes me feel a bit better.
Yeah.
But how does this all connect to cryptocurrency? Is there a WorldCoin token involved in all of this?
There is. It's called WLD. But it's more than just another cryptocurrency.
Okay.
It's key to their whole vision for a new kind of financial system.
So it's tied to this new financial system, but how?
Right, so they see the WLD token as the fuel for this whole thing, right?
Mhm.
Their vision is a world where everybody has a World ID,
Oh,
and that gives them access to a share of WLD.
regardless of anything.
Yeah, regardless of, their background or location.
Mm.
They talk about using WLD for things like micropayments and remittances.
So almost like a universal basic income, but in cryptocurrency. That's a pretty radical idea.
It is, and they actually call these WorldCoin grants, which are essentially regular airdrops of WLD to
Okay.
every verified human.
Interesting. So like, how would that even work?
So imagine, for example, like a remote village in rural India where access to traditional banking is very limited.
Right.
With World ID and these WLD airdrops, they could participate in the digital economy,
Yeah.
potentially, lifting themselves out of poverty.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. That's a powerful example. So we've got these world IDs, but how does that system actually work on a technical level?
Right.
I know their white paper mentions something called semaphore.
Yeah, you're right. They do talk about semaphore,
What is that?
which is a pretty complex cryptographic protocol.
Okay.
But essentially, it helps ensure anonymity within that World ID system.
Okay, so break that down for me. How does that work?
Okay, so imagine like this giant global ledger, kind of like a blockchain, but specifically for World IDs.
Okay.
So when the orb scans your iris, it turns your unique pattern into what they call an identity commitment, which is basically like a digital fingerprint, but it's scrambled so no one can actually trace it back to you.
Right.
Semaphore is what manages all these anonymous commitments on this ledger.
Okay, so my iris scan is anonymized and added to this list of verified humans.
Right.
But how do I then actually use this World ID?
Okay, so let's say you need to use your World ID to log into a website or vote online or something.
Right?
You generate a special digital proof using your private key, and that proof confirms that you're part of that World ID club
Okay.
without revealing your actual iris code
Got it.
or any other personal information.
So it's like that secret handshake we were talking about earlier, but like on a technical level.
Exactly. It's this really elegant combination of cryptography and decentralized technology that allows for both security and privacy.
I see. Speaking of security, they go into a lot of detail about the Orbs technology in the white paper.
Yeah,
It sounds like they really put a lot of thought into the hardware itself.
they did.
Like, what kinds of things did they focus on?
So they talk about using multiple wavelengths of light to capture those subtle details in your iris. And they also use 3D cameras
Okay.
to prevent anyone from trying to, fool the system with just a photo or something like that.
Yeah.
Remember, they need to be absolutely sure that they're dealing with a real live human.
Okay, that makes sense. So they've gone all out on this orb thing, but what happens if the orb itself gets hacked?
Right.
Could someone potentially steal everyone's iris data?
That's a concern a lot of people have raised. And to be fair, no system is foolproof, right?
Right.
But they did design the orb with security in mind. So for one thing, the iris code is generated locally on the device, and it never actually leaves the orb itself,
Oh, wow.
unless you explicitly consent to sharing your data for, like, research purposes.
Okay, so even if someone stole the orb, they wouldn't actually have access to this, like, giant database of iris scans.
Exactly. Plus, they have tamper detection, secure elements, and the ability to remotely update the orb's firmware if they need to address any vulnerabilities that they discover.
That's good. It sounds like they thought of pretty much everything.
Yeah.
But this whole project seems incredibly complex.
It is.
We're talking about custom hardware, advanced cryptography, a global rollout.
Right.
It must be so difficult to actually pull this off.
It is, and I actually find it refreshing that the white paper doesn't shy away from these challenges.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like they talk about the need to build trust,
Okay.
the difficulties of, navigating regulations in different countries,
Right, right.
and, the potential for just human error or, bad actors.
So they're not pretending this is some perfect system. They acknowledge that there are still kinks to work out.
Exactly. They even mention the possibility of, like, false rejections,
Okay.
where the orb might not be able to scan someone's iris properly for whatever reason.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's a work in progress, but they seem to be pretty upfront about the limitations.
That's good. That level of transparency is definitely important, especially with something this ambitious. So we've talked about digital identity, privacy, even UBI, but how does this all tie into their vision for a new financial system?
Right.
So how does all this tie into their vision for a new financial system?
Right. So they see the WLD token as the fuel for this new system.
Yeah.
Like they talk about creating a more equitable distribution of wealth,
Okay.
especially as, automation and AI become more prevalent.
Right.
Imagine a world where everyone has access to at least basic financial services, no matter where they live or what their background is.
Yeah.
That's their big picture goal.
It's a compelling vision, but I'm curious, how do they plan to actually manage all of this? Like, who's in charge of WorldCoin?
Right, and that's what's really interesting is that they're not going for a traditional corporate structure here.
Oh, really?
No, they're really emphasizing this idea of decentralization
Okay.
and community governance.
Community governance. So the users would actually have a say in how WorldCoin evolves.
Exactly. They believe that it's essential to build a system that's like truly owned and governed by the people,
Right.
not by, a small group of executives or investors or something like that.
Interesting.
They even talk about using World IDs to enable like secure online voting, right?
Okay.
So that people could vote on, key decisions related to the protocol.
So it's not just about proving you're human, it's about giving those humans a voice in how this all works.
Exactly.
I like that. But with something this new, this ambitious, I mean, there have to be some concerns, right?
Of course.
Like, what does the white paper say about potential downsides here?
Well, again, it's refreshing how candid they are about the limitations and risks.
Okay.
They acknowledge that no system is perfect,
Right.
and they do address some potential pitfalls.
Like what?
For example, they talk about the reliance on trust.
Trust. How so?
Right, because even with all this cryptography and, security measures, they admit that the system isn't entirely foolproof.
Okay.
It still relies on the people and organizations involved acting responsibly.
Right.
So, for example, they need the orb operators to be trustworthy.
Right.
The Worldcoin Foundation to, act ethically.
Yeah.
The community to actually make wise decisions.
It sounds like there's still that human element involved, which, means there's always a chance for things to go wrong, even with the best intentions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They also discuss, the possibility of governments or other powerful entities trying to, like, co-opt the system,
Right.
for their own purposes, like surveillance or control.
Yeah. It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Creating this powerful tool that could be used for good, but also making sure it doesn't get used for, harmful purposes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they do emphasize the importance of transparency
Good.
and just open discussion,
Right.
which is crucial with technology that has the potential to impact society in such a broad way.
It sounds like they're aware of these ethical considerations, at least, and they're trying to address them proactively.
They are. And they don't claim to have all the answers, but they're encouraging people to, like, ask the tough questions,
Yeah,
be involved in shaping how this technology evolves.
that's good. It sounds like WorldCoin is really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with, like, digital identity and finance. But it's not a magic bullet. There are definitely a lot of complex issues to still figure out here.
For sure. It's a powerful idea
Yeah.
with, like you said, the potential for both really positive and potentially negative consequences.
Right.
And it's up to all of us to, stay informed,
Yeah.
think critically about these issues, and decide what role we want this kind of technology to play in our future.
Well said. Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into WorldCoin. What's the one big takeaway you want our listener to walk away with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that WorldCoin is more than just a cryptocurrency.
Okay.
It's more than even just like a technological innovation. It's a catalyst for a much larger conversation
Oh,
about the future of identity, about the future of finance, and even, what it means to be human in an increasingly digital world.
it has definitely given us all a lot to think about. Thanks for breaking it all down for us.
Of course. Yeah, it was a fascinating deep dive.